when compared to all other photography. Everything else is in your control. So, you can adjust the lighting, you can adjust the subject, you can move around. But with wildlife, you can do nothing. With all your knowledge back, but you're given no choice. You have to just document. So that's what is the greatest challenge. And that also, one of the key important things that needed is jungle craft. This is not taught in any universities or in any colleges. The jungle craft is like if you were to cross a very busy highway in your city, you know how to cross it, because you lived there, you've learned it. It's like that. How do you kind of move around the forest without disturbing the environment around, being alert all the time, not run into a danger? And that's what is jungle craft. It's very difficult to define it. Where have I learned it? I've learned it from all the tribes, whom I worked with. Be it Anamalai, you have various tribes there. Or if it's Bandhavgarh, those people who are living around the national park, the Mahouts, they are the people who teach us about the jungle craft. I'm not a wildlife scientist, that is something which I missed out very badly. How I wish if there was an option, I'd go back and study wildlife sciences. So I do not know about all the animals or the animal behavior or the science or the flora of the forest. Every forest we go, we kind of work around with the people, slowly understand the geography of the place, understand various trees. The way we speak in the forest between Mahouts and tribes is, you go down there, behind the hill, there is a particular palas tree. That's where you turn left, and there is an ala running there. And there you have the big egg-shaped boulder. That's the way we talk. And all the time we're talking about north, south, east, west. We're not talking about, it's prior to GPS and those kind of days. And that's what works there. So that's what is the importance of jungle craft. How does one learn jungle craft? Is best is to kind of go down, spend enough time in the jungle, and whenever you get, and spend time with trekking down along with the local tribes. You might find a bird watcher. Or if you're in Tamil Nadu, there is one hell of a guy whom I learned a lot. There's a guy called Ganeshan in Topslip, Anamalai near Prachi. There is a tribal settlement called Ermapare, and he's an amazing bird watcher, And I used to be walking around with the Salim Ali book of birds. Don't know ABCD about it, but you just hear the call and say, hey, that's the hornbill. And then we sit there for the next 20 minutes to kind of spot it. But you'd have said it 20 minutes before that there is a hornbill there. And the kind of sharpness of his eyes to look for it, all those are part of the jungle craft. How do you fight leeches? So very simple basic techniques, like if you are the first man to walk, the leech only wakes up when your leg hits the plant. Then only it wakes up and says there is a mammal going to come. So I will kind of use it. And then how to check wind flow. If there are elephants around, you need to check from where the wind is flowing. If the wind is flowing from you to the elephant is very, very, very sensitive. It can smell that you are there and it'll move out. You can't do any photography or, so such elementary things about jungle craft, the more time you spend, and the greatest professors are all the tribesmen, Mahouts, foresters. Those are the people whom you kind of learn it. Another thing is identifying various trees, by their bark, by their leaf. It's again, it's not about just kind of taking a botany book and by hearting it and then going to the forest and identifying. As you walk in, you realize it. Understanding various seasons. Ultimately, it is kind of learning to be with nature, understanding nature in every aspect. Another thing is about birds, There are times I have sat in heights. I normally kind of know how to shoot my tiger, for most people who have seen various tiger films of mine. And the most explanatory film is The Great Cats of India, because in which I'm a presenter. It's about a wildlife cameraman and his dream to shoot all the 4 great cats of his country. The lion, tiger, leopard, and the snow leopard. So when I get into a hide, I normally kind of get in early in the morning at first light. We get into this 5 feet by 5 feet hide and sit inside till evening, till sunset, Until then people come. You're not allowed to take a book and sit and read, because then you get reading the book and you lose out. Your sense of hearing has to be so open. and you understand everything around you purely by the sounds that you hear. You hear an alarm call, you know a cat is approaching. One of the most common things we do is we sit in a water hole in summer, you know, because it's predictable in a forest that as the summer goes up, especially like a month of May and before the monsoon can arrive, a number of water holes dry up and only very few, there is some water left. The animals, to quench their thirst as well as to cool themselves, they will come down to such places. And if a cat is going to come, you make sure that you make a hide, which from the cat's point of view is not visible or discernible. You know, it should be very well merged with the environment. Most of the time we use local materials, you know, rocks, bamboo, dry leaves and kind of stuff, and then build it. So you need to work out for what environment, what kind of a hide you want to make. But I normally kind of carry a small 5 feet by 5 feet temporary camouflage material hide, as well as we buy from the army shop. They use a net, a camouflage net, which they use for the Bofors gun. We put that over that finally to kind break the straight lines of the set. Otherwise, it's a cubicle, and a straight line, nothing is in straight line in nature. It's all irregular shapes. So we break it down by putting this, and then cut some branches, throw it out. And that's how we kind of make a hide. And then we sit. When we sit, many times I've realized a tiger walks so softly. Um, Even on dry leaves in a month of May, you won't hear it walking, you know. Whereas the birds at various points would give out there's something approaching. It might be right at the beginning, a monkey giving an alarm call at a distance. You learn to gauge at what distance what is coming, either east, west, which direction. And then if a deer spots a cat or any carnivore, not necessarily a tiger, then that would give a kind of an alarm call. And then followed by, if it starts to run, you know it's quite nearby, at what distance it has seen it, was it alarmed? And these are the most common alarm calls, which kind of give you an indication of what is happening. There is a cat approaching. There are times even birds like peacock start giving out alarm calls. Tree pies give out alarm calls, you know. So if you get used to the calls, then you know this is a normal call, this is an alarm call. And those are the indicators. And then you just perk up and then keep looking around for what is moving. And suddenly you'll notice something, get the focus, get going and start shooting. And another big thing about like working in the forest, there have been times like with a friend of mine, Ajay Desai, who's an expert on Asiatic elephants. We were shooting in Mudumalai. And from morning, we've been kind of trekking with this one herd of elephants. And by the time we were, because there is a big herd of nearly kind of 26 animals, they were spread out. We were trying to keep a constant eye on all of them. And as we kept moving, we lost a track and suddenly we heard some tree breaking sound. We realized from behind, there is another set of elephants coming. So these elephants had gone to the water body and they were drinking water there and they were just coming back and we were following them. And we realized there's another herd coming in. We didn't know what to do, you know, from both sides, you know, two large herds spread it out. We decided to kind of say, okay, fine, let us all freeze. We each one went close to a tree and we froze, took care of the wind direction. The wind was blowing from the animal to us. And I was there standing with the camera and an elephant which crosses me, but something like 25 feet distance from me. And all I had to do is completely freeze, and the elephant didn't notice me. Now, well, wind I had mentioned about. Couldn't the elephant see me? No, it couldn't. If you go read about it, most of the animals are partially colorblind. They're not fully colorblind. They see something slightly better than black and white. You know, it varies with animals. With cats, with dogs, you know, there are two colors they can see. So it varies with animals. So basically, generally, we presume that they can only see kind of black and white. And so what we do is we wear kind of this camouflage cloth, which basically represents, or a brown, depending if I'm working on a dry deciduous forest, then I would be more into khaki and a brownish camouflage kind of a dress, and as covered as possible. And then when you freeze off, then you merge with the background because they can't separate colors. Additionally, we don't, when I'm working in the forest, we don't use soap at all. Never any moisturizer like Nivea or any one of those stuff. Or none of our crew members are allowed to use anything, something like the eucalyptus oil, Amritanjan, and stuff. We've had very bad experience where we'd go very close to the animal and suddenly realize one of the guy was having Amritanjan, and that's it, the animal would detect and move away. So that's one way we hide our smell. Their olfactory senses are very, very high. And that's in terms of how you kind of hide yourself from the animals. What is the primary goal of a wildlife cinematographer? You know, my primary goal whenever I'm there in the forest is there is so many of such behaviors to be seen and recorded. And then that goes out onto a mass media on television or screens and magazines where people understand behavior of the animal. The more you know about it, the more you appreciate it, the more you love it, you know, the more you love nature. You can live in harmony. You know, at the end of the day, it has to be an Eden where man and animal can coexist. And so that is what we are all the time trying. So if I'm trying to film from a hide or trying to film in the forest moving around, because if there is an animal moving around, we keep ourselves as far away as possible so the animal's behavior is not disturbed. There was a time when television was producing, there were only primarily two large kind of organizations which are producing wildlife films. One was the BBC Naturalistry Unit in Bristol, another was National Geographic. And these were producing for one hour film or a 53-minute film for Sunday in America, another 53-minute film for Europe. That's what was the only thing which was happening all through my childhood and younger days. When suddenly television was expanding in a big way, the accountant sat and said, oh, wow, for this one film, we earn only X amount, one film in a week, we earn X amount through advertisements. What if we became an 8-hour channel or a 24-hour channel, you know, running all the backlog films and various things, how our revenues would increase. When that came into existence, that's when you started getting 24-hour channels on wildlife and stuff. And that's when they couldn't produce enough wildlife films because there's an average time which is taken for producing a wildlife film is 2.5 years. For a good, what I mean, a blue chip wildlife film. The first film on tiger, which I had shot, took me 4.5 years to kind of film it because nearly 1.5 years took me to habituate the tiger. I don't use the word domesticate, habituate, because in Bandhavgarh, when we started the film, there was the famous tigress Sita, which was on the cover of National Geographic. It took us nearly 2 years to kind of, every day we used to go with my close friend and philosopher and guide, Kuttappan, on his favorite elephant, Siddhanath. We used to go see the tiger after 3.5 hours of struggle tracking it down. It would turn, look at us for 5 seconds, and then fleet out. There was no way I could film. For 1.5 to 2 years, I did not get any good footage, not more than 1 minute. That was with my great friend Ashish Chandola. He was doing the film for Survival Anglia. And Anglia were so nice. They used to kind of ask Ashish, do we need more support? Do you have hopes to make the film? We say, yes. And they used to send more film and more financial support. We ended up waiting there for 4.5 years. And that's how we made the first film. All I'm trying to say is that patience is a very important thing. There are times when I have been to the hide for 7 days, 8 days at a stretch. We knew that the mother with the young calves in the peak of the summer would come down to rest in that place, that school. But somehow it never would come, We'd never lose school, go 7 days, 8 days, 12 hours a day, go sit there. And on the 10th day or the 11th day, something will happen, And so patience is undoubtedly a very important thing. I mean, these days, Wildlife tourism has improved a lot. I'm happy to see a lot of Indians going down to national parks, still much less compared to those visiting, Europe and Disneyland. And but they go there for one night and then they come back and say, "Oh God, I didn't see anything there. They showed this in that film, and that film would have taken 2.5 years to shoot. And I went there, I didn't see a tiger." So we used to have one board written in Bandhavgarh, which used to say, "Don't feel sad that you haven't seen the tiger. The tiger has definitely seen you." You know, so that's the kind of stuff. So I recommend that anybody interested in wildlife and going down there, spend at least a minimum of 3 nights, and 4 days. Then you have chances of kind of going and see there. Added to it, have the patience to be in your gypsy or whichever safari vehicle you travel. Listen to your guide, stay silent if you hear an alarm call. If you're lucky, you will get to see it. There is no other shortcut or a better way to increase your chances of seeing rather than kind of driving around all the time. I'll later show you a still picture. Once in Bandhavgarh, the tourism reached a peak level where there used to be kind of 5-6 gypsies kind of lined up all over the road, and the tiger can't cross the jungle road. With population increasing so much, that's kind of happening in all over the national parks, and things are now even moving out of the national park. Like near Coimbatore, it's become a very often thing that elephants are coming out of the national park, coming into villages. In Gujarat, it has become a very common thing that lions are coming out of the national park into villages. And you hear about elephants in Valparai and tiger and leopard, n number of cases which are kind of coming out. And recently we had a case of 2 tigers killed in Anamalai, national park. That's a man-animal conflict. The farmer had tried to kind of poison a wild boar, and the wild boar got itself poisoned, and that was killed by the tiger, and the poison was so strong that it killed both the tigers. So such is the situation of man-animal conflict. And coming down to shooting stills, like I haven't done much of stills, because I was a motion picture cinematographer. I'm paid by a television network or an independent producer, like Icon Films in Bristol. So my first job is to kind of look through my motion picture camera and shoot the behavior. As I'm looking through the camera, I get my technical parameters sorted out through my head, focus, exposure, the level of magnification you want to keep. And then comes the major question inside your head: should you switch on the camera or not? Because I have shot my wildlife films mostly on film. So for which you need to understand the psyche of the animal and inner instinct of years of working together in the wildlife and with the staff. You realize, okay, man, this is heading towards somewhere. Either we stop, take the elephant, move further, go somewhere else, or you start rolling and keep panning and something will happen. I mean, like one of the incidents which comes to my mind once was, I think it was, I'm not sure, it's part of the tiger kill, I think. There is this situation where I'm following this tigress and she's walking really fast. I wonder what the hell is happening. We're moving with her. And suddenly she turns and goes, catches a fawn, a very young fawn. She catches it in the mouth, not killing it for a while. By the time I could settle down on my elephant tripod, I mean, if you people watch a film called Great Cats of India, which is available on YouTube, you will know what I'm talking about, an elephant tripod, evolutionary stuff which happened, how to shoot steady shot of tigers from the elephant. So I saw this tigress having caught this fawn, and I said she has 3 young cubs, just barely kind of 3-month-old cubs. So I said, she has to carry food for the young, and it's a very small fawn. Is she going to carry the fawn there? And no, she sat and ate it. And just 2 days before that, I had shot the wild dogs in its den. They kind of kill, eat, and come to the den and regurgitate their meat for the young ones. So I thought, could it be a kind of a weird thing? This tiger is also going to carry these, whatever she has eaten, not take it fully into her digestive system, go back to the den where, and it's a basically cave in the mountain where the cubs are. Why don't she go there? So we rushed with the elephant. We reached there much before the tigress could come, and set up our elephant tripod, everything, and we are keenly waiting. As we are waiting, before the tigress could come, I'm hearing alarm calls of the tigress coming. From by the side of the cave, there's another cave, and a sloth bear comes out of it. And I said, how can it be? The tiger cubs are in the hole next, and there's a sloth bear there. I said, what the hell is going to happen? I do not know. And immediately we quickly changed magazines, and because there's something major going to happen. And rather than a passive sequence of this one coming down to feed the young ones, the tigress comes up. The bear can't hear for whatever reason, comes out at the same time. And I'm wondering where it should keep the camera. Should I be on the bear or should I be on the tigress? Some instinctively says, follow the tigress, and I follow the tigress. It comes and goes for the bear straight. She goes literally 2 feet away from it. Both of them stand up and par, but both of them don't touch each other. If the bear would do a couple of scratches on the tigress right on its face, the tigress can't survive. In the sense, it will survive the fight. It might even kill the bear. But the injuries will be so bad that later on gangrene could set in the places where its tongue can't reach. Because the cubs are really young. She has to feed the cubs and keep going with them. So she doesn't take the truss. She doesn't go touch it. But a severe fight kind of happens, both roaring with each other, chase the bear out fully. And then the tigress comes back to the cubs, and then it sits down. Regurgitation didn't happen. So such kind of instinct is what helps you to run, go ahead, above, and get it. That's why wildlife filmmaking is not a way to make a living. It's a way of living. And what is it over the years you learn is, I did wildlife filmmaking. That's what kept me in the forest. But it was a way of understanding nature. How does nature function? The years that I've sat there in the hide and kept wondering, humans, our cultural values, our moral values, and majorly our emotions and how we deal with the death. And there have been times I've seen a leopard has made a kill of a deer, and it is there. The leopard is sitting and eating it. The leopard gets up and goes to drink water. There is this dead cheetal which is there. And behind that, I see a herd of cheetahs slowly grazing and moving across. I kept wondering, would humans do this? They wouldn't do it. But what happened to animal? Are they senseless? They don't have the maturity or anything of that kind. But there have been times when I've seen an elephant calf which is dead, and the elephant stands there and literally has tears in its eyes. They've also evolved through it. They do have emotions, but one of the key things they all seem to have understood is survival of the fittest. If you're not fit enough, you can't live in the jungle. The rules are very clean and they're followed clean. There was a tigress who had 4 cubs in Bandhavgarh. One of the cubs was blind. And for 3.5 to 4 months, we have been following her. By the time the cubs were around 6 months of age. And this cub used to be always lagging behind. So we had the doubt that this club could be blind, but none of us could be confirmed about it. One fine day, morning, they finish eating a kill and then they walk. The tigress decides the 3 cubs are running in front. She always used to stand and pull this last cub along. That day, she turned and gave one last look and walked across. It takes a kind of 300 meters, 400 meters. She takes a detour, goes through the water, and crosses across with the 3 cubs, and this 4th cub is left behind. No way to go. The water was one of its ruse to kind of wash away the smell. This tiger cub went up to a distance, and then it is completely stuck and can't go left or right and doesn't know where to go. Forest department was very trying to wonder whether to kind of take the cub and throw it into the zoo. We were all a group of naturalists who were there. We were against it. We said leave nature to itself. And as we could, next morning we come back, we fed it. The forest department killed a goat, brought it, gave it meat. That was the time the Mahout who got down to give the meat, he goes around in front of the tigers, shakes his hand and all the stuff in front of the eyes, and you realize the tigers is, the cub was blind. Anyway, we leave the cub behind. The next morning we come, we see a dead tiger. It was killed by another male tiger. All this clearly proved that the tigers, you compare to our cultural background, the way we look at mothers, be it in stories, cinema, or in reality, that a mother is supposed to be the most affectionate to all her offsprings and everything. But in the world of the forest, it's survival of the fittest. It's clean and straight, They've maintained their eco-balance very well. And in a lot of ways, after years and years of working, I realized the wildlife is a lot more matured than the human species, undoubtedly. That's a larger reading. In terms of talking about Gitsu was saying, a lot of people are interested to know more about my so-called, hard experiences of shooting wildlife. Well, I still sincerely think that it's much safer to be in a forest than cross a Western Express highway in Mumbai, Jungle craft, and if you know jungle craft, then wildlife is predictable. If ever an animal is going to charge you, it's because you didn't know your jungle craft and you crossed your limit. There have been times like in Amazon, I was filming for 3.5, 4 months in deeper Amazon. We were doing a series called Journey into Amazonia, 3-part series. And I finished off filming, some footage of jaguar and monkeys and all this stuff. And then coming back to my base in Manas. And as I'm coming back, and to take a night halt in Aria Towers, which is one of those 5-star high-raised resorts in Amazon, where they have a long skywalk where you can walk through it, and it's very, very high, and with air conditioning, all this kind of stuff. So from there, I spend the night, catch the boat next morning, and start moving down. And sitting next to me is one other tourist, and who's wearing the dye print from Jaipur of elephant motifs. And I'm telling her, this is from India, this is elephant and all this kind of stuff. She says, wow, and she says she doesn't know swimming. And then, while we were talking, the 6th minute into the boat, there is panic in the boat. There is a fire at the back of the boat, and everybody starts jumping out. It's a very small fire. And the first guy to jump is the skipper, the captain of the boat. I said, what the hell? How can you just jump out like this? And this lady jumps out, and she just told me that she doesn't know swimming. So my language interpreter, who was there because they speak Portuguese in Amazon, I had a language interpreter from UK. He was a lovely swimmer. I told him, this particular lady doesn't know swimming, jump out and save her. She's jumped into Amazon. So he jumps out to save her. There are other guys jumping out, and then I'm throwing out life jackets to them. People are jumping without life jackets. There's this Hungarian who comes up to me holding his passport and says, I want to jump, and he can't speak English. I need something. I realized he needed a plastic cover. I pulled out one from a camera bag and gave it to him, sealed it, took a life jacket, said thanks, and jumped. And then suddenly turned around and said, I'm the only guy in the boat, and the boat is still moving. I had all my equipment. I had kind of 3 camera bodies, 7 magazines, some 6, 7 lenses, exposed film, unexposed film, batteries, you name it, all packed into some 7, 8 Pelican cases. And I said, one thing I always have been kind of taught, and what I've learned and follow, is never panic in a crisis situation. There is always a way out. I said, let me wait. There should be some way out. Let me analyze the situation. I looked at the boat, and right in the front, there was a large kind of open area. So I've moved all my camera cases there. Went back to check what are the cause of the fire. It's a small, kind of a 2 square feet kind of a fire, but it's a cloth which is burning. And near the cloth, there is a gasoline tube which is running. So I don't have the guts to kind of go there and pull it out. So I said, something will happen. As I keep on observing, I'm just looking at the boat, it's going in a small curve. Amazon is a very wide river. There are places where you're in the middle of the river, you don't know which side is the shore. And I said, okay, fine. At some point, the boat will turn and I will get a show. The flame kind of leaps up and the whole canopy and the seats on the boat are all highly inflammable material. That catches fire, which means I am forced to rush to the front open deck. I go wait there, and for 15 minutes, again further, the boat keeps on going. And it goes literally 5 meters near the shore. And I said, what I thought was perfectly right. Here, now I can jump out and save myself. At 5 meters at that point, there is a burst at the back of the engine, and the boat turns around 180 degrees, goes towards deeper Amazon at a higher speed. I said, nothing I can do. The wind is blowing because I'm in the front. Luckily, the flame is towards the back. Nothing I can do. Wait for another, 20 minutes before the boat comes to a halt. And by the time it comes to an halt, another boat which is going by sees this boat on fire. He stayed at a distance, and then he comes and says, he speaks in Portuguese, says, jump and come. I look outside, there is a big school of piranhas. My boatman, Waldemar, who used to regularly take me on his dhow boat, he used to do fishing while I'm filming in the front of the boat. And every time he used to catch a piranha, he'll take it and throw it out. He won't put his hand and take it out of the boat. He'll first hit it with its oar, kill it, and then only reach, because the canine kind of a shape of two long ones are so bad. That's what he used to do. And so I look at this whole school of piranhas, and I'm wondering, should I kind of die sitting in the boat or jump into the piranhas? Basically, the piranhas were attracted to the flame, the fire and the heat, what it was kind of creating. The other guy, I'm not able to communicate to him that there are piranhas. He is threatening to take the boat and go if I don't jump. So finally, I had no other choice, put on my life jacket and jump out. I'm jumping out of the life jacket for the first time. So I thought the minute I jump out, I'm going to float. But the momentum kind of takes you down. I kind of say my last prayers, think of my family, and another momentum pushes me up, and I come out and float. And within seconds, I learn to swim and I reach the boat. Then I sit and cry, because I sit and observe all my equipment are in that other boat. They're all kind of catching fire one by one. The cases are bursting out. And, that's just one of the kind of weird experience of kind of going through and coming. That did not fall into the river. It was completely charred. It was burnt completely. And so I went back again the next day, the burnt boat, and we went to kind of photograph it for the sake of insurance in England. So I went to this tourism shop and I bought this. It's a use and throw camera. It has got a film inside it. It's a built-in camera. You straight away gave it, you click those 36 pictures. So it has the fixed lens. And in the tense stress moment, I completely forgot that these cameras have a kind of a minimum focus. So instead, I started clicking close-ups and all this kind of stuff. Took wide shots and then close shots of the camera, trying to search for the serial number and that kind of stuff. And I remember I came back and we processed. We could barely get 6 to 8 pictures. All the close pictures were out of focus. And so that's it. It was written off. And then I came back and restarted my life. It was a tough rebuilding my career. I had another Tiger film to come back and start, and I didn't have a camera. I had a producer girl who was in UK. She had a boyfriend who's a cinematographer. She was seriously trying to push him in. And I remember my daughter was barely kind of 2 or 3 years old. With all the cooperation from my wife and my whole lot of relatives around, a person of Indian origin all over, they all sent me small amounts of money, and it was my wife's sudden idea that let's collect from friends and relatives and we will pay them back. Go look for the latest camera. So I went to and bought the latest camera from Ariflex those days. It was an HSR3 model for whomsoever is into cinematography, and then bought those camera. And with a tough journey, kind of came back to India and restarted. The common thing, is the great cats of India, because where I come in as a president, you see how a wildlife cinematographer works. And then there is this other film, Tiger Kill, which is a tiger making a kill was not documented for a long time as a single shot. Through editing, they have matched various things, create an audio effect in between. 32 years before me, there was an Australian cinematographer called Stanley Breeden. He had shot it in Ranthambore. I think, if I'm right, the name of the tiger was, forgot, Genghis Khan. Genghis is what I vaguely remember. He had a strategy of killing animals in a lake. And there used to be this crocodile, which used to wait for these animals. And parallelly, either the crocodile would catch it and then he would go catch it, then fight with the crocodile and bring the kill out. Because if it's by the side of a water body, there weren't many trees, the visibility was much better. You see a lot of predation sequence, that's what we call it. These carnivores making a kill in Africa, which are shot with long lens. You see this long, high-speed shot of a cheetah jumping and going behind the impala in high speed and finally making the kill. Most of those shots, in my memory, are shot by a good friend of mine, Simon King. He was also a co-presenter in my film Tiger Kill, where he comes and guides me why I'm not able to get a kill. The one is the geographical difference, and second was the approach. The geographical difference is in savanna grassland, you don't have trees, so the visibility is completely open. Whereas in Indian woodlands, you have a lot of trees which are there and which block your views. There are n number of times I have been there. Evening light is fading. I can see the tiger, and the tiger is going for a kill, and the prey is there. But at one point, the prey will disappear. The tiger will follow the tiger. Camera will go up to a point, and the tiger will disappear. Then I can't see anything. I only hear a sound and then move around, and then you'll see either the tiger is caught or not caught. A tiger is successful in making a kill not every time. Very, very, very few number of times it is successful. It's a very tough life. There are times like a tiger will has usually a feast or famine, will make a kill, sit on it and eat for 2 days, and after that, for the next 4 or 5 days, I've seen tigers run around with no food, only water. By the 6th day, I'm getting worried. Will it have the strength to make a kill? 6th day, 7th day, it'll go out and make a kill, then regain. It's amazing. They don't have refrigerators, and they can't buy in stock like that. Yeah, I agree that I'm one of those lucky guys. Considering those times, things have changed a lot now. Well, it was minus 45 degrees. Temperature was the biggest hassle. And I had shot the snow leopard in Hemis National Park in Leh, at around probably Leh is around 11. This must have been 13,000 feet altitude. A close friend of mine, Nandu Kumar, he was there with me. And I had another filmmaker, cinematographer, Ted. He's from UK. He was there parallelly filming me in action. The mistake we did was we shot tiger, leopard, and lion all on the plains. And during those times, for the sake of continuity, I was shaving every day. And so here up at minus 45 degrees, living in a tent, I had to kind of every day get up and still continue to shave in such cold weather. And such cold weather is unbelievable. You have a sequence in the film itself where you see, like one morning we wake up before we start filming, our toothpaste tubes are frozen, lens, you take the lens and the lens is kind of frozen completely. The lubricant, the grease which is inside the lens, that is frozen, So that is why what we do when we go for such sub-zero temperature shooting, we take our cameras, lenses back to the manufacturers and degrease them completely, but you still need a lubricant which will not freeze, and that's lead powder. So we kind of fill it up with lead powder, then come back and then you run it. One of the hassles of running cameras with the lead powder is the noise level goes up, which is the big thing as far as wildlife is concerned. So we get special, wrap around woolen material to kind of just reduce the sound of the camera coming out. But Leh was a different cup of tea altogether. you could kind of look out, and this animal lived on the ridges. When you see on the ridge, the wind speed is extremely high. It's so high, you can't even stand there and for a long amount of time. You will see it towards the closing of the film. I had the snow leopard right in front of me. I had enough film, but I stopped filming and I come back. Um, and also a factor that Himalayas is one of the world's youngest mountain, that when you go at the higher reaches, if you try to climb, you have something called a scree, which is kind of loose, small boulders, which is every step you keep, and you try to climb 2 feet, you'll come down by 4 feet, and then you pull up. And in that situation, to put a tripod and put your camera with your heavy 150 to 600 millimeter converted lens, a super long lens, and to balance the camera and then put the blimp over it and then start shooting was not an easy job. Normally, I prefer to shoot with a height, but at 13,000 feet, you've lost already the tree line, the alpine tree line, what they say in the mountains, because after a particular height, you don't see any trees. It's a high altitude desert, basically. So I could see the snow leopard, and I'm struggling to reach it for kind of 2.5 to 3 hours, and it can see me very comfortably sitting there. And the way it was spotted was by our cook, who had this thing about spotting scope. And there used to be this narrow angle spotting scope, which is in our camp, tented camp. And he used to keep looking at it and spot it in the ridge, And then we used to go to the spotting scope, and it'll take us kind of 10 minutes to see, that's the snow leopard. The reason is its camouflage is so good, unbelievably good. So finally we reached there and got those so-called portraits, not great behavior. But there was a kill which was lying there, which was like at such sub-zero temperatures, minus 45 degrees, or even more with wind chill factor. These kill will just lie there, just frozen. Nothing is going to get spoiled ever. But whereas in the lands, when kills get spoiled, tigers seem to kind of like it. It's a kind of a bacterial reaction of partially breaking down the whole protein and the muscles, and easily digestible probably for them. So whereas that's a kind of an experience in snow leopard. And there have been nights when I used to kind of get out of my tent and go out for a pee. So you're on a 3-layered sleeping bag, and you are wearing another 3 layers inside, and various layers of socks, a very thin capillary socks, then over that a mild woolen socks, and then a heavy woolen socks. Then you get up and put on your shoes for another 6 minutes, tie it up, go out into the snow in moonlight. And it's honestly, it's such a great, it's paradise. It's Jannat to see there. You won't feel like peeing, It's such a great sight in moonlight. And it's all bright and so beautiful, the mountains. Take your pee, then come back. And anyway, you suffer from insomnia very badly in high altitude. And we had, Columbia, name it, the big companies, sleeping bags, this, everything. Still, I used to feel cold on the floor. Finally, went and checked with my cook, and then he suggested the corrugated cardboard, which where he brought all his groceries and stuff. He said, I'll just take one of these corrugated cardboard, open it for you, put it below, and then you sleep. Then it became so warm. Then we realized these channels, corrugated channels, which have the air, which gets heated up, and they hold the warmth for you. Such small discoveries is amazing in wildlife,
Thank you, sir, for your explanation. Ahimsa has a question. Please unmute and ask. If I pronounced your name right. Yeah, I've unmuted you. You can ask. Small. Ahimsa, yeah.
What would Alphonse consider his best work?
Lovely. How old are you?
He's a cute kid.
I'm Santosh's son.
How is it? Lovely. How old are you now?
I'm going to be 11.
Wow, nice to see you. Great. To answer your question, no artist is ever kind of happy or satisfied. the best work is yet to come. I've spent my life kind of going through documentaries to wildlife, and then I moved on to feature films. Now my goal and idea is to kind of bring wildlife to mainstream, and with change of technology, I think very soon you should see, probably 3 or 4 years, a wildlife film releasing in one of the cinema halls, if the coronavirus allows any cinema halls to be opened ever again. Let's wait and see.
Thank you, Ahimsa. Udit has a question. Please unmute and ask Udit.
Nice to see people, Gitanjali.
Thank you, sir. Udit, can you please unmute and ask? Udit. Yeah, I've unmuted you. You can ask, Udit.
Hi, sir. This is Udit. I'm from London.
Hi.
I'm Gitsu's cousin, actually.
Oh, is it? Lovely.
Yeah. So my question is, so on your travels around the world, have you personally seen the direct effects of climate change, say on biodiversity and landscapes?
Yes, not during my wildlife project, but 2 years back or 3 years back, we were shooting a television series with Ashish Chandola titled Everest for Star Television. We were in a place called Dokrani, a glacier, which is supposed to be kind of frozen for nearly 6 months. And we went there to film. It took us 4 days to walk. That's behind Gangotri. And when we went there, in 2 months, temperatures went up and the ice started melting so badly. And we had a television series which was running live. And so we had to pull in number of episodes. And my tent, which was completely in snow, I used to kind of walk in and stuff. Suddenly at one point, as the ice started melting around, from my tent, I had to put a ladder to climb down, because right under my tent, the snow had not melted, and that height came to something like 6 feet, as tall as me. And that's when we realized, wow, things are getting really worse. And parallelly, that's the year we tried to go into base camp, Everest base camp, and send a team across to film a couple of sequences, at the beginning of Khumbu glacier. And due to a severe avalanche, nearly 13 of our Sherpas whom we had employed got wiped out. All those are impacts of, you call it global warming or whatever man has done damage to nature. And the beautiful proof is right now, once the coronavirus has set in, and we've had a lockdown of whatever, 40 days. And in Delhi, people are saying that the Yamuna has improved, Yamuna has supports a beautiful Garial, and it's gone completely back, and now it is recovering. The Tibet is still going.
Hi, sir. This is Kuldeep. I just wanted to know, when you shoot these wildlife films, and now since you're shooting commercial cinema, how exciting is it, and how exciting was that? The comparison between the two. What do you find more easier or difficult, dealing with the human being or dealing with the wildlife?
I don't look at it as a job, unfortunately. Fortunately for me, throughout my life, while I was shooting wildlife, I was a student of nature. And now I'm a student of cinema. Earlier when I was doing photography, I was a student of life. That's the way I'm going. There is something called joy of learning. And every new thing I do, I get this opportunity to learn various things. And finally, cinema is the most powerful medium in terms of communication. So the whole art of storytelling, this is what I'm right now as a student of cinema studying. And hopefully in a couple of years' time, I should be able to bring in my experiences of true wildlife stories straight onto the large screen. But suddenly a rethinking is happening. The way coronavirus and things have changed the world, probably everything is going to be on OTT platform and televisions in future. The so-called cinema, is still more interesting. But there are some technological revolutions which are happening, like HDR and stuff. OLED television with HDR, it will be a much better experience than a large screen. Unless cinema changes from being screen and projector to small pitch LED walls, high resolution LED walls, which can reproduce HDR kind of a quality, then things could change a lot. So one needs to wait and see. But to answer your question, I've been just smoothly came from here to there. And I just didn't want, like when I was doing wildlife, I was doing financially well, I was understanding nature, everything was great. To be honest, I was more happier in the forest than in the city, but there is so much more to be learned. If I have to be a good, sincere student of cinema, then I have to live in Bombay, in a concrete jungle, where people are so ignorant that they don't even realize where the oxygen comes from. Concrete cannot produce oxygen, you need trees, you need plants to produce oxygen. And people were so ignorant. Hopefully the corona will teach them a lot, and hope they will.
I have a question, sir. My name is Shakti Vignesh.
Yeah.
How do we create a story for a wildlife documentary? Should we have a frame of a puzzle before going to the shoot, or just after the shoot we need to write the story according to that?
It's an evolving script. Okay, there is drama happening wherever there is conflict. There is drama. When you know that you are following one particular animal, its survival, its behavior, it has its conflicts. So if you know the basic principles of storytelling, which is during wildlife times, there was one thing which was taught to me by a very close friend of mine. He learned it from a German cinematographer, Dieter Plager, who kind of passed it on. The basic line is action, reaction leads to drama. So basically they're talking about conflict. So every time I'm shooting something, this will resound in my mind, action, reaction, this is going to lead to drama. And when it leads to drama, there is a scene, sequence, and the sequence has a beginning, it has a middle, it has an end. It's over. It's like Rummy, I built one set. So now, after a year or second year, when I see I have this set, I have this set, I have this set, I need the joker for in between. So then you go starting looking at what are the soft stories, change of season, exposed camera, these days time lapse.
Everything.
Time lapse has reached a point where I hate it every time I see it. It's so unnatural mimicking kind of a stuff.
Yeah, totally changed, sir. Actually, in the current decade, it has totally changed.
Correct.
And also, how much the books are important in this documentary filmmaking, sir?
Very much important. One of the key thing is whatever, I'm not an expert of any animal. I'm honestly an expert of nothing, literally speaking, because I just know my basic photographic skills. I know my basic latitude and how to operate a camera and long lens and composition and whatever. Then I spend a lot of time with scientists. There are too many of them from whom I have studied. In fact, I've been very lucky enough. There was at one point, I had to shoot along with Ashish Chandola a promo film for Wildlife Institute of India. At that point, not many people were joining the MSc Wildlife course at Wildlife Institute of India. Excuse me. At one point, that time I remember it was mostly the BCom government jobs, which are the bank jobs, which are the most promising. And so when people were kind of joining into the wildlife courses, so I worked with a lot of them. We were shooting this film for Wildlife Institute, and there was a request for a repeat telecast in television. Those days there was only one television channel, which was Doordarshan. And then after that, the second year, they had the number of applicants had doubled for Wildlife Institute of India. So every year, Wildlife Institute of India runs something called ARS, an annual research seminar. So there used to be a lot of years I've gone there and sat and spent half asleep because these guys are talking science, putting out layouts and grid and proving this and that,
Yes.
which used to literally put me off to sleep because my basics of science were very poor. And but still we used to hang around there, meet these guys, and evening after a couple of rums when they speak, when you hear, you understand behavior a lot more. And be you're open-minded to study, you keep observing things. And when you correlate XY, then amazing things happen. And during that, when I finished that wildlife thing, Saravana Kumar, another friend of mine who's done
Yeah, I know him, sir.
know him?
Yeah. Yeah.
He came down and said, hey, look, I want to join you to try my hands on photography. And then we said he was already a photographer. And then I thought, it will be a great collaboration so I can learn the aspect of science which I missed out by joining Wildlife Institute. And we collaborated. I learned a lot from him.
Now I got it. So that's how you connected with Saruna Kumar.
Yes, very much. He was my teacher.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
What would be your preferred, aperture when you are shooting a wildlife? Because lighting is always a problem. So how do you manage your infield?
I presume you know the basics of photography, so I'll kind of just take that presumption. I was shooting most of my stuff on film, unlike digital. I didn't have the flexibility to change my ASA. I knew I literally had no control. I had a lovely assistant called Devarajan who used to kind of load magazines and there used to be 3 magazines. And one magazine used to be loaded with a 500 ASA. That was the maximum sensitivity we had. For a small window, Kodak had released 800 ASA film. And that was a great boon for me. So I used to push this highest ASA possible by 1 stop, or at times to 2 stops. So that is for the early morning, because I go into the forest at 4:30 inside. With car headlights, we start searching for the pug marks. We track one of the early pug marks, and by 5:15, first light which was there. If something is sighted and if I have to film, then Devarajan would have put that magazine, highest ASA magazine, being pushed by 1 stop or 2 stops will be there. Usually it used to be a 500 ASA pushed to 1 stop. And that will go on till 5:45 or 6. By 6, even without any communication, Devarajan will pull that magazine and put a normal 500 ASA magazine onto it. Then by 6:25, when you see first sunlight has come out, sun has risen, then he'll pull out that 500 ASA and then he'll put a 250 ASA film into it. That goes on for a while. By 7 o'clock, he'll pull that out and put a 50 ASA magazine on it. And then he will take the other 2 magazines and unload them, the exposed down and unexposed down separately canned out, and load 50 ASA on it, for the rest of the day. So it was a constant exercise, whether he was in a gypsy or whether he was sitting on an elephant. And Devarajan and has had a great track record that in 16 millimeter, while you're working in the forest, it's very difficult to have a clean gate, not have any bit of dust or any hair in it, or a lint from the changing bag or from your sweater during winter. Nothing. With Devarajan, I've never had a gate.
No.
Next,
With Ganesh.
In terms of aperture and stuff, I am a student of Ansel Adams zone system. So I used to go completely based on that with a reflected meter. And I knew my latitude of whichever film I used to test it thoroughly. So I knew that I have a highlight in my frame. I'm not going to allow that to bleach. And my tiger is walking into the shade. I know that it'll have details in it, and focus was something which we did always on the eye, and we trained ourselves so well by practice that when you take the focus and twist it left and right, it came sharp and you stop. That decision making was spontaneous. It was not that, hey, thoda sharp karein, not that, no confusion. We never had autofocus there, and the level of concentration is like a zen. That what you see through the viewfinder and how you pan, you don't even know when you pan, you don't know when you stop, but you are in complete sync with the animal. That's a level of concentration. I never drink when I'm shooting wildlife films when I'm in the forest. Never take, any grass or anything of that kind. We hit the bed at sharply by 7:45, 8 o'clock, and we are up in the morning. And I always, even during winter, used to have, even if it's a cold water bath, have a bath and then only go inside. Because the first animal which I see with a 600 millimeter lens on a Super 16, if I have to pan with it, it's a narrow angle of coverage. I need to pan at a particular speed. I can't afford to have one single take go wrong. Because in wildlife, there is never any free take. Does that answer your question?
Yes, sir.
Yes, two questions and then we'll continue with the agenda. So, Raj Prasad, can you unmute and ask? And next we'll go to Manu. Raj Prasad, can you unmute?
Hi, sir. Good evening, sir.
Hi, good
Yeah,
evening.
hi, good evening, sir. Yeah, during the introduction, Gitsu was saying that you have done some projects in Sri Lanka. Can you please share that experience, sir?
In Sri Lanka, at Yala, I had to shoot for a couple of days, where to get some leopard footage. And I worked a bit on the Nigambo river bank. And on the Nigambo river bank, I had shot some monitor lizards and stuff. Not any full-fledged wildlife kind of a stuff I've not done in a Sri Lankan forest. My Yala is one of my dream places, because being from India, I can't see leopards so easily as you see in Yala. Are you from Sri
So
Lanka?
you have not been to Vilpatu, sir?
I have not been to Vilpatu.
Yes, sir.
You're from Sri Lanka. Good.
Yes.
Some friends.
Yeah, actually, I think my question was answered because somebody else asked the same question. It was about whether the footage comes first and you work the script around it, or you have some ideas in your mind and then you kind of adapt it to the kind of footage that you have.
I mean, to answer your question straight, we start with a dream, imaginable kind of a sequence of all the stories we have heard. So we'll say we'll get this, we'll get that, and all this kind of stuff. As we go down kind of 6 months to a year, you realize you've got only these things, X, Y, Z, and these are all missing. So then you drop your earlier dreams. Then you start going with what is happening. You go with an open mind. And one of the key things that I do is whenever I'm there working in the forest, in the sanctuary, is never ever take an off. You never know what is there happening for you in the forest. That could be your best day possible. So never ever take a break. All the time we are there. Unless you are there, you can't see it, you can't record it. And number two, once you reach a point, then along in discussion with the producer, who's kind of handling a lot of films, so he has a couple of story ideas in his mind, and he knows his audience. Then we say, okay, let's add this, that possible. And then you would say, this particular scene, the editor is working on it, he's missing out on XYZ cutaways, So then we look for cutaways, and then we go and film them. And towards the final last 6 months or a year becomes very challenging, because I know that there is only budget to kind of go for another 3 months, and it is already May. And I have to get a couple of shots in June and July, which are monsoon shots. By June 1st, the southwest monsoon will set in Kerala. And I have only 1 week before it reaches Madhya Pradesh. So I need to get all my summer shots within that 7 days. And you're struggling hard. It could be either a particular bird or whatever, because the master scene would have been shot in the month of May the year before. So that's all in a dry season. Now, those are the traumas we kind of just go through. But it's very interesting and challenging,
Thank you, sir. Prashant had a question. He had raised his hand. Prashant, I've unmuted you. Can you please unmute? Yeah.
This is Prashant from Bangalore.
Hi, Prashant.
I have a question regarding this. Actually, you answered partially this question initially. How do you see the difference between analog filming and digital filming? I have a great respect towards analog filming because they had a limited resource where they have a limited number of magazines and film rolls, whereas digital media uses some SD cards and other digital stuff where they can overlap and they can, use it again and again. And they have the privilege of hit and trial methods, though it is not a big thing. But yeah, so how do you see personally from coming over from film photography and filmography from films to digital media? Sir?
I think digital is a lovely thing because film is basically not environment friendly, but a lot of youngsters are kind of romanticizing about this whole thing of, oh, I missed out of shooting on film. I'm struggling hard to set up a dark room to kind of do stills on film. I have a couple of my students who are very romanticizing about it. But the truth is, it's completely unenvironment friendly, the kind of developers and all that stuff which went into the earth, we've done so much damage here. And, population, we are not able to control. The resources in one planet is one. That's why, I remember I did a film earlier called One Planet. And now that's one of the reasons I'm happy that we can shoot with digital. Number two, today with digital, when you press your camera on, there is no sound. Whereas with film, you have to struggle hard with the blimp and all that kind of stuff. And additionally, today with professional digital video cameras, have something called a cache recording, which is there's a kingfisher sitting there, which is going to jump and catch a fish. I don't know when it will happen. I put it into this cache recording that goes into a hard disk and it's continuously recording. So the minute I see the kingfisher take off from the branch, I go hit the switch. The previous 8 seconds, which was on the hard disk, which will fall into my recording, and the continuous recording will happen. So, it's just a question of me trying to be alert. And be today with the kind of resolutions you have, it'll be like unbelievable when you bring it onto a large screen. You shoot something on wildlife and you bring it out. It'll be unbelievable, like an 8K resolution. You shoot something on a king cobra on a macro level or a scorpion and you bring it to the large screen. I can't believe it, the kind of impact it'll have. And plus, digital has helped sound design to come to a great level. One of my dreams is to kind of sit and do a wildlife film and sit with Rasul Pukuti and do the sound design. There is one experience which I'd like to tell you all is, I was once contacted by a Hollywood director who were doing a Hollywood film to kind of join the team as a partial cinematography kind of a stuff. So I was lucky to it. The title of the film is called Amriki Pandit. Not Amriki Pandit, sorry. Oka Amriki. Amriki Pandit is the film which I'm working on right now. Oka Amriki. And this was a true life story of an American who goes into Africa as a sound recordist, how he settles down, and that's his life. So, and he settles with the Bayaka tribes. And this was happening in a country called the Central African Republic. That's the name of the country. So anyway, with great difficulties, kind of I reached there, filming. And my director had a script in which they had to get a shot of a wild elephant charging and another of a gorilla charging. Anyway, we said, okay, fine, let's go there. So the other cinematographer was Conrad Hall Jr. His father, Conrad Hall, he had shot American Beauty and a very well-renowned cinematographer. So I said, wow, Conrad Hall Jr. is also a very renowned person. So I said, we'll be proud to kind of go see them work and catch up. So he called me and said, what kind of a camera do you want, Alphonse? So I said, get me the as silent as possible a camera. And preferably that was in 35 millimeter with a larger magazine, like, 1,000-foot magazine. And he said, okay. And then he brought a Panavision Millennium, which is a very large camera, So let me just share my screen. You'll just see it. And I also had what you see there, that image that I'm standing with that Panavision Millennium camera with the 1,000-foot magazine, which is a huge monster of a stuff. And the Pelican case, which you see below, that's the battery. And the person who's standing behind me is my American assistant. Anyway, so we had the situation, and then they said that, okay, we want to get the shot of an elephant charging. So I told them, nobody has trained an elephant to charge. None of the Asian elephant I know, nobody trains it to charge. So if the charge has to look realistic, then we have to get it done with a wild animal. So they said, what do we do? So I said, give me 10 days time. Let me go around, figure out. So I started moving around with an African tracker, a very nice guy, with his broken English, and we used to kind of communicate. And we went on for a while. And one day, this guy, on my 6th day or something, he says, I've got a stomach trouble. I'm just going into the bushes. Do you want to just stand here? So I'm standing there by the side. And after kind of 10 minutes, this guy comes running out with his trousers down. And I wonder what the hell has happened. He says, there is an elephant there. It charged at me. So I said, why? What? And as we sat and observed, we realized he was a young bull, I think. And he comes there to kind of drink water. And suddenly this guy was there in interaction. So I said, relax, that's what we've been searching. We've been searching for an elephant to charge. So we spent the next 3-4 days observing it and figured out he regularly comes there to drink water. And his habit was he will not drink in the edges, because the minute he steps, the dust and stuff will start floating in the water. He loves clean water. So he comes a little bit inside, kind of 6 feet inside, and there is a 3-4 inch depth pit there, and he'll drink water from there. And this is in Zangabai in Central African Republic. And hang on, I need to change my picture. So finally we decided, okay, this is the strategy we're going to do. We're going to go and put the camera up there, and this African will be by my side. When I tell him at one point, he knows I taught him the angle of coverage of my lens. He will go avoid my frame. He'll go outside and walk, which will infuriate the animal, and he'll come charging. And I will stand there and film. So one of the standard questions most people ask is, aren't you scared of wildlife? The truth is, animals are a lot more sensitive. They can sense the fear in you. As much as you are scared, the animal is also scared. So if you can cash in on that, and if you believe in this principle, it can work. But I'm not recommending that you try it, because if you'll have to do it at your risk and stuff. But I believe in it, and I stand. So what happens is, I stand there. This elephant comes to drink water. I wait. It comes further deep into water and starts drinking, and it keeps staring at us. What are these guys standing out there with a camera? What is this weird thing and not moving? As he's drinking this, my African tracker suddenly distracts it and runs. And this gets disturbed, and it comes charging. As it comes charging to me, I do the follow focus, I zoom out, and I get my shot. The elephant stands there, looks at me for a while, kind of at some 15 feet, splashes some water on me, and then moves back. It doesn't come forward further because it gets scared. What is this thing which doesn't get scared of me? It might be powerful than me, and he goes. Being a Hollywood production, they had sent a team, and there was a doctor behind us at 100 meters who photographed this stuff. It is those photographs which I'm going to show to you now. That means I hope the arrow works. What should I do?
You have to press the arrow on the screen here.
Right, I got it. Okay.
Yeah.
This is the Sean. This is the female gorilla, part of the big silverback which we are shooting. It was part of its harem. I'll tell the gorilla story later if we have the time. See, this is me and the African tracker standing there and shooting. That elephant is there standing near the water. Then he turns, he steps further to kind of come in and start drinking water. The tracker runs. You can see him charging at me, this elephant. Finally, when he realizes I'm not moving, he splashes water. And just when he runs away, we realized on my right, there were unnoticed elephants who start running. These elephants heard the sound and get worried something is happening. So this is kind of, prove my strategy of how I work on, but I'm not recommending anybody to try it. It's at your own risk. Great. Yeah. Should we
have a few more questions, sir. Senthil, we'll start with Ahimsa. Please, you raised your hand. Please unmute and ask your question.
Alphonse, how do you sustain your energy for the full day?
How do I sustain my energy? Sorry. Well, it's early to bed, early to rise. And most of the day we get to eat decent food, but there are times when you enter into a hide early in the morning. You go to the forest hoping that you'll come back. And suddenly you realize a tiger has made a kill. And that's a particular tigress for my story. I need to get it. And there is monsoon approaching. Then what I do is I just pluck some amla or gooseberry, which is there in the forest, take it and go sit in my hide with 2 bottles of water. Run through the day, come back in the evening and eat. It's kind of sustainable. It's not that every day you need to have, the food that you are conditioned to do. I love food, but I'm open-minded and adaptable in the sense when I go down to forest and work, it's the tribals who will kind of, whatever they cook and give you, that's what you got to eat. And for nearly, what is most boring is, in that particular village, everybody will be growing only one kind of vegetable. It will be only tinda or potato or whatever. So you have to live on that one vegetable for kind of 2-3 months. So that used to be a bit boring, but we get used to it. And we sustain and pull through.
So now, sir, poaching is controlled nowadays, all right, sir? Up to you. What is the point, sir? Actually, before it's been higher, right? Because before there will be more big cats hunted and other species like deers and monkeys also even they are hunted. Up to now, what's the current position, sir? Is it controlled or up to you? What's the thing, sir?
To some extent, it is controlled. It has not come down to complete zero. One simple reason is what we did was like Mrs. Gandhi, when she heard the story from Billy Arjun Singh and various other naturalists of those times, that you need to save and protect the tiger. The lion was nearly at its extinction state. So they brought in this Wildlife Act 1972 and a firefighting operation started. When that happened, what we did, we took a part of the land and we said, this is reserved for the animals. When we put a compound and we said, nobody will go inside, the animal will be there. And we said, humans will be there on the other side. And hunting as a sport was stopped. So animal population slowly started increasing. On this side, the human population, which the medical science improved, and life expectancy when people were kind of kicking the bucket at 65, are now pushed up to kind of 85, 90. Infant mortality kind of came down, nearly zero. Maternal mortality came down, quite a big number. And now couples who don't have children have artificial reproduction centers helping them. And so the human population has also multiplied, the animal population has also multiplied, but the land mass has not increased. It's bound to happen with conflicts, Those conflicts are now increasing a lot. I do not know how we are going to kind of handle it. In Africa, what they've done is they've done selective culling. What they do is they take one herd of elephant and eradicate the whole elephant, so nobody is left behind with trauma and stuff. We cannot do that in India because the primary conservation in India is our Hindu belief. Every animal is associated with an animal, Ayyappa with the tiger, Murugan flies on a peacock, you have Ganpati and an elephant. And that is the primary reason that we have a major conservation which is going on. Managing wildlife in India with our cultural values is going to be a big challenge. But, Corona is going to teach us so many things, to respect nature, and we will respect it and things will automatically happen. If we don't listen, if we don't correct ourselves, nature will teach us to correct ourselves.
There's one more question, sir.
Yes, please.
So, what's the scope for wildlife photographer right now in India, sir? Is the scope is much better or it's in western side only? How is it, sir?
Far, far better. There are positives to it, negatives to it. One thing is today in photography, even an ordinary idli stall or a puri stall needs a photography to sell images. Okay. Now, post-corona for some time, it's the internal tourism is going to pick up in a very big way. Okay. Even though foreign tourists won't be coming in. So every state has to now raise its tourism potential. So they need photography, Magazines are going to write about that. Cinema halls are going to be closed for a long time. So people like to go into nature again. And all these are positive sides. So if you are seriously interested, you can pursue wildlife photography and go to a great level. Unlike my times, we were kind of at various handicaps. But on the other hand, today the disappointing factor is the government and the forest department is looking at wildlife photographers, scientists, everybody like the old zamindar kind of an attitude, It is our zameen and we won't allow you inside even for genuine purposes. And the fee for photographing inside wildlife sanctuaries has gone up very, very high. The restrictions like you've got to take a guide, you got to take the gypsy, it costs so much. Today, if you have to take a still camera and go into the forest and do 2 safaris in a day, it might cost you nothing less than 7,000 or 8,000 rupees. How is the average young student who's interested in wildlife going to get an opportunity to go and sharpen his teeth, Unless he spends 30 days, 40 days, he can't do that. That's the biggest handicap. I hope the government will change. We all need to write up and get these rules changed so the support is given, One another easy way to do it, like if you're seriously interested in wildlife photography and want to spend time in the forest, study wildlife sciences, Go down to Wildlife Institute of India, do your master's, do your post-graduation. Alternate approaches, become a tour guide or a field guide who can take tourists inside and work with the resort. Taj runs very good resorts and stuff. That way you'll get to be there and click your pictures.
Thank you, sir. Senthil, you can unmute and ask your question, Senthil.
Sir, was a very, very nice session. Thank you for sharing so much of experience of your experience with us. I'm curious to know how you have kept your fitness and health regimes in place. And has there been situation where you had to choose between resting and getting into the wild? And if you could share some of those experiences, or if there was any freak accidents which you had to overcome to get through to whatever you have achieved so far.
But honestly, during my wildlife days, I was a lot more fitter. I'm not the kind of guy who had gone into the gym and all this kind of stuff. Never done that. And but in the forest, I used to walk quite a bit, and I've comfortably walked. I've struggled and walked. A very close friend of mine, Nandu, he knows how much I've struggled when I was in Bhutan. We had to go out and shoot this animal named takin. It very rarely photographed animal, but not pleasantly beautiful in the sense it's like a cross between a horse and a donkey kind of a stuff, but no photography of it. So we had to go for a good long trek for nearly months on end in Bhutan in search of these animals. And when we went on it, I remember I struggled quite a bit. I was not as fit as this other friend of mine, Nandu, who's a sound recordist and has been on the Everest up to Camp 2 and all this stuff. So with this help, I just kind of pulled along. I've struggled. But on the other hand, I've been down to base camp of Everest and filmed and stuff. And completely fit, It's finally now what I've realized with my wife's guidance, who's an acupressure doctor, is if you finish off your meal in the evening by 7 o'clock, you turn to burn a lot of weight, because the next 2 hours, your body kind of digest everything, and the rest of the time is given to the body to do an auto repair on its own. And that's what I'm following, and that's kind of seemed to be doing wonders for me.
Sir, I would like to know, is there any book you would recommend primarily to understand the behavior of the birds? How do they fly, the way they fly, where they should fly, their nesting habits, for not just for the birds, but also for the various animals, to know the behavior aspect, so that we may not get a lot of experience like you, but maybe by studying we may try to get that experience.
Hey, today, to talk about books in the days of internet and Google, I would only suggest primarily kind of 2 books to kind of start with, which is Salim Ali Book of Indian Birds and The Prater's Guide of Indian Mammals. If you're a beginner, these are the primary things to go into the forest, which will help you with sighting birds and stuff. Other than that, there is so much more latest material these days available on the net. There must be a photographer who had just gone to photograph Sarus crane or something. He has seen something very new or very close. His image and his observation, he'll be putting it out. And if you're interested in Sarus crane, then if you open the net, you'll get to see a lot of stuff, And there are some lovely other filmmakers like Shekhar Dattatri, Ashish Chandola, Naresh Bedi. His son is also doing some wonderful films. Nallamuthu. There are so many of these films these days available on the net for you to kind of go down. The minute you get interested on what particular thing you're zero down to on, like there is, I'm not getting his name in Bombay. who's a great admirer of the peregrine falcon and the birds of prey. He spent half his life doing that. When you get specialized on such needs, then you go to those particular books. Look for also people who've done PhD on each one of the species which you want. Go meet them. They would have published papers, and everything is available today on the net. Honestly, I'm not recommending any particular book.
The person that you are right now is very different when you're working. I mean, when you're working, it's a very, I hope it's a different space altogether for you. How do you see someone working in this right now? So you have made your film years back, or when you were young, or when you were of our age, you were in that time. You made that film that time. And,
there has been a change coming from young to now, and otherwise I'm the same person working. I've matured a lot more. Learned to accept nature as it is. It's unpredictable, so I'm willing to accept failures, or I don't get anything. I don't loosen my heart, and increased power of observation, increased capacity of listening, lot more listening, and open-minded. And there is so much knowledge and information around. My days there was nothing. Whatever I got and read and books, and life was a lot more easier. The post-internet era, the lot is pointed out to you what all you don't know. It's all the time constantly making you feel small. Hey, you don't know this, you don't know this, you don't know this. And that's the only big difference. Otherwise, as a person, I'm the same. I'm maturing day by day. I think this is nature. If you capture it as true as it can, and there is a beauty in nature, you need to open your eyes to it and see it. I mean, like, these are all nothing, just ordinary forest floor. I just captured it. But the height of knowledge that we develop into photochemistry and the technology and stuff is to reproduce true colors, and also to reproduce true tones. The brown has to be the same brown, and the yellow is the same yellow, not half a stop brighter or darker. Then there is a great beauty in nature, and there is a great harmony of colors in nature. You see, when man does what he does with colors and what nature does, that's all I'm trying to communicate. And I have done nothing to these images. I have not done any Photoshop or processing, adding, intensifying color, nothing. It is just reproducing true color, not even done lighting. There's natural sunlight in the forest the way it comes. I call it celebration of browns, and brown is the color of the earth, earthly colors, and there is so many shades of that. Colors of nature, you see leaves, one which has gone orange and stuff. I do these things and extract color palette from these things because there is an amazing harmony of colors. For each particular film, when I do features, I need to kind of do a palette of colors for the costumes and various things. I do these things, get this true reproduction, and from these I extract colors and create a palette. This is something which I had mentioned early, what happens these days in the forest, unruly behavior of tourists. There is this one tiger and you see something 4, and there is behind more number of gypsies, 6 to 8 gypsies in such a big crowd. Only Corona will have to save us and the tigers. So if we behave a bit more dignified fashion, without putting pressure on the wildlife, it'll be great, because we can't change the equation of the human density versus nature. We've already crossed it. It's an unbalanced situation, but it's we who have to restrain ourselves and do it. Otherwise, we'll reach a point where sanctuaries and national parks will become like zoo. We can only watch wildlife film. Let's not go to that situation.